I agreed to go to Olivia's college reunion because she said, "Appearances matter, Ethan." "It's only one evening," I replied as I started my old sedan. She sighed loudly. "Do you know how embarrassing this car is? It still works." "That's not the point. Everyone else will arrive in luxury cars." I kept driving. "And please," she added, fixing her makeup in the mirror, "don't talk too much tonight." "What does that mean?" "It means let me handle the conversations. Stay in the background." Her words stung more than I expected. "I'm your husband, Olivia." "I know," she said quickly. "I just don't want awkward moments." I nodded, though my chest felt tight. When we reached the hotel, bright lights reflected off expensive cars lined outside the entrance. "See," Olivia whispered. "This is exactly what I was talking about." Inside, music played softly while groups of former classmates laughed and hugged. A woman with a name tag smiled at us. "Olivia Parker. 10 years already." "Sarah." Olivia hugged her. Sarah looked at me. "And you are?" For a second, I expected Olivia to say my husband. Instead she laughed lightly. "Oh, this is Ethan. My driver for the evening." Everything inside me went silent. Sarah blinked. "Your driver?" "Yes," Olivia said casually. "Parking is terrible here, so he brought me." A few people nearby chuckled. I forced a smile. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Very dedicated driver," someone joked. More laughter. I looked at Olivia, waiting for her to correct them. She didn't. Instead she started talking about her job as if nothing had happened. Then a tall man in an expensive suit walked over. "Olivia. Wow, you look incredible." "Daniel," she said brightly. He hugged her and turned to me. "Who's this?" Before I could speak, Olivia answered. "My driver." Daniel grinned. "Seriously?" Ham. He laughed so loudly that several people looked over. "That's amazing. Hey, man, since you're already working tonight." He pulled out a set of keys and tossed them toward me. "Think you can park my Porsche too?" The keys hit my chest before falling into my hands. Around us, people laughed again. My face burned. "Daniel," I said quietly, "I don't work here." "Relax," he replied. "I'm kidding." "He's very sensitive," Olivia added with a small laugh. That hurt more than the joke. I remembered staying awake night after night while building my business. I remembered paying Olivia's tuition when she was struggling. I remembered helping her parents with medical bills. I remembered telling myself that love meant supporting each other. And now I was standing in a crowded ballroom holding another man's car keys while my wife laughed at me. "You know what?" Daniel said. "Keep the keys for now. Maybe I'll need you later." He walked away with Olivia beside him. I followed slowly. As they joined a larger group, I heard Daniel ask, "So Olivia, where did you find such a loyal driver?" "He's been with me for years," she answered. The group laughed again. Not one person knew she was talking about her husband. I stood there smiling because I didn't know what else to do. My hands trembled around the keys. Olivia avoided looking at me. She kept talking, laughing, and posing for photos as if I were invisible. For the first time in our marriage, I felt completely alone standing right beside her. I stared at her across the room and wondered a question that scared me more than the humiliation itself. Did the woman I married ever truly love me, or did she only love the version of me she wished the world could see? The laughter from earlier still echoed in my mind as I stood near the refreshment table, pretending to study the drinks instead of the people. "Driver," Daniel called. "Can you bring me a soda?" Several classmates laughed. I looked at him. "You can reach the table just as easily as I can." He smirked. So the driver talks back. Olivia stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Ethan, please." "Please what?" "Don't make a scene." I stared at her. "I'm the one making a scene." She folded her arms. "This night is important to me." "I thought our marriage was important." She looked away without answering. Sarah walked over carrying a clipboard. "Olivia, everyone is gathering near the stage. We're going to let people share what they've accomplished since graduation." "That sounds fun," Olivia said with a bright smile. Sarah glanced at me. "Your driver is welcome to wait anywhere he feels comfortable." I forced another smile. "Thank you." She walked away before noticing the pain behind my eyes. Olivia leaned toward me. "Just stay here, okay?" "I'll stay wherever you want." She hesitated for a second, then joined the others. I watched her become someone I barely recognized. One classmate asked, "Olivia, what have you been doing these years?" She smiled proudly. "I built my career from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but hard work always pays off." Another person clapped. "That's impressive." "It took many sleepless nights," Olivia continued. "Nobody handed me success." My chest tightened. I remembered those sleepless nights. They had been mine. I remembered sitting in our tiny apartment with my laptop glowing until sunrise. I remembered writing code while Olivia slept because she had exams the next morning. I remembered paying every bill without telling her how close I came to running out of money. I remembered selling the only watch my father had left me just so her tuition payment would arrive on time. She had cried with relief that day. "I don't know what I would have done without this miracle," she had said. I never told her I had become the miracle. Back in the ballroom, someone asked, "Did your family help you?" Olivia laughed. "No. I learned to depend on myself." Each word landed like another stone on my heart. Daniel raised his glass. "That's the spirit. Self-made people deserve respect." The group applauded. I quietly looked down at my hands. Those hands had carried boxes during the day and built software through the night. Those hands had cooked dinner when Olivia studied. Those hands had held hers every time she doubted herself. Yet tonight they were only the hands of a driver. Daniel suddenly looked toward me. "Hey, driver." I walked over. "What is it?" He pulled a $50 bill from his wallet. "Go grab us a round of drinks." "I don't work for you." "Oh?" He waved the money. "Come on. It's easy cash." I said no. He laughed. "I guess your boss doesn't pay enough." More laughter followed. Olivia covered her mouth as she smiled. Not once did she tell him to stop. I looked at her. "You think this is funny?" She answered softly. "Just ignore him." "You're ignoring him too." "I don't want drama." I nodded slowly. "I understand." "No, I didn't." A voice behind me interrupted the silence. "Ethan?" I turned around. An older man with gray hair stared at me with surprise. For a moment, I couldn't place him. Then he smiled. "I knew it was you." "Professor Hayes?" He laughed warmly. "I haven't seen you in years. It's been a long time." He shook my hand firmly. "I always wondered what happened after graduation. You were one of the brightest students I ever taught." Before I could answer, Olivia hurried over. "Professor Hayes. It's wonderful to see you." He smiled politely. "Likewise. I was just catching up with Ethan." Olivia quickly stepped between us. "I'm sorry, Professor, but they're about to start the next activity. We should head over." He looked confused. "Oh, of course. Ethan, we'll talk later." "I'd like that," I replied. As soon as he walked away, Olivia grabbed my arm. "Why didn't you tell me he knew you?" "I didn't know he'd be here." "You don't need to attract attention." I gently pulled my arm free. "I wasn't trying to." She sighed. "Just stay quiet a little longer." I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I had loved. Instead, I saw someone terrified that people might discover the truth about the man standing beside her. For the first time, I wondered if staying silent had protected our marriage, or slowly destroyed it. The room slowly settled as soft music faded. Sarah stepped onto the stage with a bright smile. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" The conversation stopped. Glasses were set down. People turned toward the stage. Sarah adjusted the microphone. "Tonight isn't only about memories. It's also about celebrating someone who has quietly changed hundreds of lives." Curious whispers spread across the ballroom. She continued, "For the past several years, one anonymous alumnus has donated millions of dollars to our university scholarship fund." The audience gasped. Because of that generosity, hundreds of students who couldn't afford college were able to earn their degrees. Applause filled the room. Daniel leaned back confidently. "I bet I know who it is." Someone asked, "Really?" He nodded. "It's probably someone from my investment circle. Those people love making donations." Another classmate smiled. "Maybe you'll introduce us." Daniel laughed. "If it's who I think it is, absolutely." Olivia's eyes lit up. "That would be incredible." Daniel looked at her. "Looking for new business connections?" She smiled without hesitation. "Of course. Successful people should know successful people." I stood near the back of the room, listening quietly. Her words hurt more than I wanted to admit. Years ago, she used to say something very different. We'll build our future together. Now she only talked about status. Daniel noticed me again. Driver. I looked at him. What? When the guest of honor arrives, make sure you don't block anyone's view. A few people laughed. I'll stand wherever there's room, I answered calmly. Good man. Olivia didn't defend me. Instead, she asked Daniel, do you really think you know the donor? I'm almost certain. What are they like? Wealthy. Powerful. Probably owns several companies. He grinned. Definitely not someone driving an old sedan. More laughter followed. I slipped my phone from my pocket. The screen lit up with 2 unread messages. Emma, have you arrived? Victor, we're here. Let us know when you're ready. I smiled faintly. Neither of them liked making grand entrances. Neither did I. I typed one word. Waiting. A second later, both replied with a thumbs up. Before I could put my phone away, Olivia glanced at the screen. Who keeps texting you? Friends. What friends? People from work. She shrugged. I thought maybe one of your delivery customers couldn't find their address. I didn't answer. Explaining anything now would only start another argument. Sarah spoke again. Our anonymous donor specifically asked us never to reveal their identity. The audience became even more curious. But after many years, she continued, they finally agreed to let us honor them tonight. Daniel smiled proudly. See? I told you. Olivia whispered, I hope we get to meet them. You will, Daniel said. And when you do, stay close to me. Why? Because people like that prefer speaking with people at their own level. His words floated through the room like poison. I quietly slipped my phone back into my pocket. Across the ballroom, I noticed several staff members speaking with someone near the entrance. They exchanged respectful nods. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Sarah checked her notes. Her smile grew wider. I've just received confirmation. The room became completely silent. Our special guest has arrived. Everyone turned toward the entrance. People stretched their necks. Some even stood. Daniel adjusted his expensive jacket. Olivia fixed her hair. I hope this goes well, she whispered. It will, Daniel answered confidently. I've met enough successful people. I know how these events work. I kept my eyes on the stage. My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. This moment wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't about embarrassing Olivia. It wasn't even about revealing the truth. It was about honoring the students whose dreams deserved a chance. Sarah smiled toward the back of the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, she said warmly, please welcome the person whose kindness has changed countless lives. The room held its breath. I looked down for one brief moment, took a slow breath, and waited for my name to be called. Sarah looked toward the entrance, then smiled at someone behind me. She lifted the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor has arrived. The room became completely silent. I could hear nothing except my own breathing. Sarah looked directly at me. Ethan Carter. My heart skipped a beat. Would you please join us on the main stage? For a moment, nobody moved. Daniel laughed first. Good one. Several people joined him. The driver's name is Ethan, someone whispered. This has to be a joke. I slowly looked at Sarah. She smiled warmly. Mr. Carter, we're waiting for you. I took one deep breath and started walking. The laughter faded with every step. Olivia grabbed my wrist. What are you doing? They called my name. No, they didn't. They did. She shook her head. Ethan, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. I gently pulled my hand away. I think we should let them finish. Daniel stepped in front of me. Buddy, the stage isn't for the catering staff. I'm not catering. Then stay where you belong. Before I could answer, another voice filled the room. Please let him through. Everyone turned. A distinguished man in a dark suit walked toward me with calm confidence. The moment I recognized him, I smiled. Good evening, Victor. He reached me, extended both hands, and shook mine firmly. Good evening, Ethan. We've all been waiting for you. The ballroom fell completely silent. Daniel stared at us. Olivia's face lost every trace of color. Victor turned toward the audience. I'm sorry for the delay. Mr. Carter prefers arriving quietly. Behind him, A professional woman in a navy business suit approached with a warm smile. "Good to see you again," she said. "Good to see you too, Emma." She nodded respectfully. "We're ready whenever you are." Sarah looked both embarrassed and relieved. She stepped closer to the microphone. "I owe Mr. Carter an apology." She faced me. "When Olivia introduced you earlier, she said you were her driver. I had no idea who you really were." "It's all right," I answered calmly. "You treated me kindly." She lowered her head. "I'm still sorry." Victor gestured toward the stage. "Ethan, would you join us?" I nodded and walked beside him. Every eye in the room followed us. Nobody laughed anymore. Professor Hayes suddenly stood from his seat. He began clapping. One clap. Then another. Soon several professors joined him. Within seconds, applause filled the ballroom. I looked toward Olivia. She stood frozen. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel finally spoke. "What's going on?" Victor smiled politely. "I'll explain." He stepped to the microphone. 4 years, this university received anonymous donations that kept hundreds of students in school. He looked at me. The man standing beside me never wanted recognition. The audience remained silent. He asked us to keep his identity private because he believed kindness should never become advertising. Victor paused. "Tonight, that changes." He smiled proudly. "Allow me to introduce the founder of Carter Nexus Technologies, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country." A wave of shocked whispers spread across the room. "The benefactor who donated millions to this university." More gasps echoed through the hall. "And one of the youngest entrepreneurs ever invited to join our alumni foundation." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Ethan Carter." The applause returned even louder than before. I noticed Sarah wiping tears from her eyes. Professor Hayes continued clapping with obvious pride. Emma smiled quietly beside the stage. Daniel's confident smile disappeared. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible." Victor looked at him. "It isn't." Daniel pointed at me. "He drove here in an old car." "I did," I answered. "He wears ordinary clothes." "I do." He couldn't finish. I looked at him calmly. "None of those things determine who I am." Silence answered me. Then I turned toward Olivia. She stared at me as though she had never seen me before. "Ethan." Her voice barely came out. You own Carter Nexus?" "Yes." "You donated all that money?" "Yes." Her hands trembled. "But, why didn't you tell everyone?" I met her eyes for a long moment. I never needed strangers to know who I was. She lowered her head. For the first time that evening, she couldn't look at me. The woman who had introduced me as her driver now stood speechless while the entire ballroom rose to its feet, applauding the man she had been too ashamed to call her husband. I stood at the center of the stage while the applause slowly faded. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on me, but I wasn't thinking about the crowd. I was thinking about the woman standing only a few feet away, unable to meet my eyes. Victor handed me the microphone. "Ethan," he said, "this stage is yours." I took a slow breath. "Thank you." The room became quiet again. I never expected to stand here tonight. A student near the front smiled. I continued, "I accepted this invitation because this university changed my life. Years ago, I sat where many students sit today. I had dreams, but I didn't have money." Professor Hayes nodded proudly. "I was lucky," I said. "Someone believed in me before I believed in myself. I promised that if life ever gave me more than I needed, I would help someone else without asking for credit." The audience listened carefully. I never wanted my name on buildings. I smiled gently. I never wanted applause. Several people lowered their heads. I only wanted students to keep chasing their dreams. Soft applause filled the room again. I raised my hand. "There's one more thing I want to say." The applause stopped. Success is a strange thing. I looked around the ballroom. Some people think success is an expensive car. I paused. Some think it's a designer suit. Another pause. Some think it's being admired by strangers. I shook my head. I don't. The room remained silent. I believe success means nothing if kindness disappears. A woman in the front row quietly wiped away a tear. I've met people with very little money who treated everyone with respect. Then I looked toward the back of the room. And I've met wealthy people who couldn't see the value of another human being. Nobody spoke. I learned something important. I smiled sadly. The clothes someone wears tell you almost nothing. The car they drive tells you almost nothing. But the way they treat people who seem unimportant tells you everything. The ballroom erupted into applause. I noticed Sarah wiping another tear from her face. She smiled at me. I smiled back. Behind the applause, Daniel suddenly stood. I knew Ethan was successful. The room became quiet again. We've always respected each other. I looked at him without saying a word. Victor adjusted his glasses. Daniel, he said calmly, are you sure you want to say that? Daniel forced a smile. Of course. Victor reached into a folder. Interesting. He removed several documents. About 6 months ago, your company requested a major investment from Carter Nexus Technologies. Daniel's smile disappeared. Victor continued. Mr. Carter personally reviewed your proposal. People began whispering. Victor looked down at the papers. He rejected it. Daniel swallowed hard. There were business reasons. There were, Victor agreed. He wrote only one sentence. Victor handed me the paper. Would you like to read it? I looked at the page. Then I read aloud. A company reflects the character of its leadership. I cannot invest where respect is missing. The room fell silent. Daniel looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. One classmate whispered, he rejected Daniel. Another answered, months ago. Someone else added, before tonight. Daniel looked around desperately. That's being taken out of context. Victor folded the papers. There is no missing context. Daniel opened his mouth again but no words came out. People slowly stepped away from him. I handed the microphone back to Victor. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. Then I looked at Daniel. I hope one day you understand why respect matters. He lowered his eyes. I stepped down from the stage. As I reached the hallway behind the ballroom, I heard hurried footsteps. Ethan. I stopped but didn't turn around. Olivia's voice shook. Please, wait. I slowly faced her. Tears covered her face. I'm so sorry. I remained silent. I was wrong. She stepped closer. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked into her eyes. You introduced me as your driver. I know. You laughed while they mocked me. I know. I kept waiting for you to say one sentence. She covered her mouth. I was scared. Scared of what? That they'd judge me. I nodded once. They already did. She reached for my hand. Please let me explain. I gently stepped back. For years, I said quietly, I explained everything with love. I took another step away. Tonight, I don't have anything left to explain. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Olivia crying my name. For the first time since we had met, I kept walking without looking back. I barely slept after the reunion. My phone kept vibrating through the night. Calls. Messages. Emails. I ignored them all until sunrise. When I finally picked up my phone, Emma had sent one message. The video is everywhere. I opened the link. The first clip showed Olivia smiling as she introduced me. This is my driver. The second clip showed Daniel throwing his car keys at me. The last clip showed Sarah calling my name to the stage. Within hours, millions of people had watched the entire story. The comments flooded every platform. Respect isn't measured by clothes. That woman lost a good man. The driver's dignity was worth more than everyone else's pride. I locked my phone. None of it made me feel victorious. A knock came from my office door. Emma stepped inside. Morning. Morning. She sat across from me. Reporters have been calling non-stop. I don't want interviews. I already turned them down. Thank you. She studied my face. You're not smiling. I didn't want this. I know. She hesitated. But something else happened. What? Daniel's biggest client ended their partnership this morning. I stayed quiet. They said they don't want to work with someone who publicly humiliates people. I looked out the window. Emma continued. 2 more clients followed. I nodded slowly. I didn't ask for that. I know. She smiled gently. It's simply the consequence of his own actions. After she left, my phone rang again. This time, it was James, my attorney. Ethan. Good morning. I thought you should know something. What happened? I received a call from Olivia's company. My heart sank. What about it? They're investigating several claims on her resume. I closed my eyes. She exaggerated her role in past projects. They found out after the reunion? Yes. I sighed. I don't want to hurt her. I know. But this isn't coming from you. After the call ended, I sat alone for several minutes. I remembered the young woman who once celebrated every small victory with me. Where had she gone? The front door opened that evening. Olivia walked inside. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Ethan. I looked up. You're home. She nodded. They suspended me. I didn't answer. She sat across from me. I deserved that. Silence filled the room. Finally, she whispered, "Can we talk?" "We're talking." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I watched the videos. So did everyone else. I couldn't believe what I sounded like. I remained quiet. She covered her face. I kept asking myself why I said those things. "Did you find an answer?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." I waited. I became addicted to appearances. She looked directly at me. "I wanted people to admire me." "You already had someone who admired you." "I know. And I threw that away." Her voice broke. "I forgot who stayed beside me when I had nothing." I looked at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. We were happy once. We were. I don't know when I changed. I answered honestly. "Neither do I." She moved closer. "I thought expensive things would make people respect me." I shook my head. "Respect isn't bought." "I understand that now." Another long silence passed. She reached for my hand. "I don't expect forgiveness." I didn't pull away. "I just need you to know that I see everything clearly now." I looked into her tear-filled eyes. "I believe you." Hope appeared on her face. "But believing you isn't the same as forgetting." Her shoulders dropped. "I know." She started crying again. "I'm sorry, Ethan." "I know. I'm truly sorry." "I know." Those two words seemed to hurt her more than any anger could. She lowered her head. "I kept waiting for you to yell at me." "I don't want to." "Why?" "Because life already said everything I don't need to say." She stared at me. "What do you mean?" I spoke quietly. "You lost people's respect. You lost your job. Daniel lost his clients. None of that happened because I planned revenge." I paused. "It happened because every choice has a price." She wiped away another tear. "So this is karma?" "I don't know." I stood and walked toward the window. "I only know that bitterness would change me into someone I never wanted to become." She slowly stood beside me. "I wish I had understood that sooner." "So do I." We stood in silence, looking out at the dark city. For the first time since the reunion, I realized I no longer wanted revenge. Watching life reveal the truth had brought me something far more valuable than victory. It had brought me peace. The house felt strangely quiet for the next few days. Olivia and I lived under the same roof, but we barely spoke. One evening, she knocked gently on my office door. "Ethan?" I looked up from my laptop. "Come in." She stepped inside holding 2 cups of coffee. "I made your favorite." I accepted the cup. "Thank you." She sat across from me. "I think it's time we stopped avoiding the conversation." I nodded. "I agree." She took a deep breath. "I've rehearsed this speech 100 times. You don't have to rehearse with me." "I know." She stared into her coffee. "When we first met, I loved your kindness." I smiled sadly. "I remember. You always believed people mattered more than money." "I still do." She nodded. "I used to believe that too." "What changed?" She didn't answer immediately. Finally, she whispered, "Fear." "Fear of what?" "Being judged." I stayed silent. When my coworkers talked about luxury vacations, expensive cars, and designer clothes, I started feeling small. "You never told me." I was ashamed. She wiped away a tear. "I thought if people knew my husband lived so simply, they would think less of me." I looked at her quietly. "So you decided to think less of me first?" She closed her eyes. "Yes." The single word carried more pain than a long explanation. "I kept chasing approval," she continued. "Every compliment felt like success. Every expensive thing became proof that I belonged. She shook her head. But none of it made me happy. I leaned back. You already had everything that mattered. I know that now. She looked directly at me. You gave me safety. You gave me freedom to chase my dreams. You helped my parents without ever asking for thanks. You celebrated every small success I had. Her voice broke. And I repaid you by pretending you were my driver. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked, if that night never happened, would you have changed? She lowered her eyes. I don't know. Her honesty hurt, but I appreciated it. I think I would have kept pretending everything was fine. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling the truth. She reached across the table and held my hand. Ethan. Yes? Can we start over? I looked at our hands. I wish life worked that way. It can. I gently slipped my hand away. No. Fresh tears filled her eyes. You don't love me anymore. I do. She looked confused. Then why? Because love and trust aren't the same thing. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I still love the woman I married. But I don't know the woman who stood beside Daniel and laughed while I was humiliated. She covered her mouth to stop herself from crying. I hate that version of me too. I believe you. Then please. She reached toward me again. Give me one more chance. I slowly shook my head. If I stay because I feel sorry for you, we'll both spend the rest of our lives pretending the crack isn't there. She whispered, so this is goodbye. I think it has to be. The next morning, James arrived with the paperwork. He greeted us quietly. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. So am I answered. Olivia signed first. Her hand trembled so badly that she had to stop twice. James looked at me. Are you certain? I closed my eyes for one moment. Then I signed my name. The sound of the pen leaving the paper felt louder than anything else in the room. James gathered the documents. I'll handle the rest. Thank you, I said. After he left, Olivia walked upstairs. An hour later, she came back carrying one suitcase. Nothing else. She stood near the front door. I don't deserve forgiveness. I didn't answer. I just hope one day, when you think about me, you remember the girl who loved you before she lost herself. A tear rolled down my face. 6 months passed faster than I expected. Life became quieter. I spent more time visiting schools, meeting scholarship students, and focusing on work instead of headlines. One morning, Professor Hayes called me. Ethan, are you free this afternoon? I can be. We're holding another scholarship ceremony. I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. Would be honored if you spoke again. I'll be there. That afternoon, I walked across the same university campus where everything had changed. This time, I wasn't nervous. Students filled the auditorium with excited conversations. Some held notebooks. Others held acceptance letters. I recognized hope in every face. Professor Hayes greeted me with a warm handshake. It's good to see you again. It's good to be back. He smiled. Do you know how many students applied for your scholarship this year? I don't. More than ever. I laughed softly. That's wonderful. He looked at me proudly. You've inspired people far beyond your donations. His words humbled me. Before the ceremony started, my younger sister, Mia, hurried toward me. There you are. I smiled and hugged her. I was wondering when you'd show up. She laughed. I wasn't going to miss my big brother's speech. You always say that. Because it's true. She stepped back and studied my face. You're different. In a good way. In the best way. What changed? She smiled gently. You finally stopped carrying everyone else's mistakes. I looked at her for a moment. I think you're right. She squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you. The ceremony began. Professor Hayes stepped onto the stage. Today, we celebrate students who refuse to give up despite impossible circumstances. Applause filled the room. One by one, students accepted their scholarships. Some cried. Some hugged their families. Some simply smiled through tears. Watching them reminded me why I had donated in the first place. This was never about my name. It was about giving someone else a chance. Professor Hayes returned to the microphone. And now, I'd like to invite the person whose generosity made many of these dreams possible. He smiled toward me. Please welcome Ethan Carter. The audience stood and applauded. I walked onto the stage feeling lighter than I ever had before. As I looked across the auditorium, one familiar face caught my attention. Olivia. She sat quietly near the back. No expensive clothes. No confident smile. No attempt to be noticed. She simply listened. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She smiled softly. There was sadness in her expression. But there was also peace. I smiled back before turning toward the audience. I picked up the microphone. When I graduated from this university, I believed success meant reaching my dreams. I paused. Life taught me something better. The room became completely quiet. I learned that real success isn't measured by money. It's measured by the number of lives you make better. Several students nodded. I've made mistakes. I've trusted the wrong people. I've experienced heartbreak. But every painful moment taught me something valuable. I looked across the crowd. If someone judges you because of your clothes, I smiled gently. Keep working. If someone laughs at your old car, keep moving. If someone underestimates your kindness, never let them change who you are. Applause interrupted me. I waited until the room became quiet again. Years ago, I thought proving people wrong would feel like victory. I shook my head. I was mistaken. The greatest victory is refusing to become bitter. I looked toward the students. Protect your character. Money comes and goes. Success rises and falls. But your character follows you everywhere. The audience applauded again. I took one final breath. Before I leave, I want you to remember one sentence. The room became silent. Never judge someone by the seat they sit in today. I paused. You never know whose story you're interrupting. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the entire auditorium rose to its feet. The applause seemed endless. As I stepped away from the microphone, I glanced toward the back one last time. Olivia was standing with everyone else. She wasn't crying. She wasn't asking for another chance. She simply placed one hand over her heart and gave me a small, grateful nod. I returned the gesture. Some stories end with revenge. Mine ended with understanding. Some victories come from defeating another person. Mine came from refusing to lose myself. I walked out of the auditorium into the warm afternoon sunlight. The weight I had carried for so long was finally gone. I wasn't the man who had been introduced as someone's driver anymore. I wasn't the husband who had been betrayed. I wasn't the businessman people suddenly admired. I was simply a man who had chosen kindness over hatred, peace over revenge, and hope over bitterness. And as I walked forward without looking back, I realized that was the greatest success I could ever achieve.